a year ago, I gave you a presentation on the mills of Absecon Creek. And you liked it. At least you said you did. And several of you came to me afterwards and asked me a question I had no answer for. And that was, why haven't you done one on Absecon Creek? So my answer was, well, how many mills were there? And basically you told me 3. You told me there was 1 on the upper reservoir and 2 on the bottom reservoir. And I want to tell you, you were accurate. But I also want to tell you, you missed several more that were on there. And you missed a whole different town that was all the way up on the other side of the tech center called Absecon Hollow. It was a little town. It was an African-American town, and they specialized in making briquettes, like barbecue, but not charcoal. And that's what they did, and I don't know when they left because they are invisible to history, but they were on some of the old maps. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the story of Absecon Creek from the deep present to now. That's a strange map. That's called LIDAR. That's a radar form. You have seen it before on Absecon Creek. That on the radar does not see vegetation, so what you are looking at there at a distance is ground contour. Does that make sense to everyone? The highest ground is red, next is yellow, next is green, next is light blue, then is dark blue, and the black is water. LIDAR doesn't work on water. Water is just water, just flat as far as it knows. Now, I want you to see what I wrote up here. I'm going to read it, which I don't usually do in a presentation, but I want you to absorb this. Atlantic County was underwater off and on approximately 8 to 10 million years ago. It was in this period that water-bound gravels of the Proto-Hudson River were carried here to accumulate as river bottoms, and the sands and clays formed an adjacent plateau. The plateau is the rig. Almost everything you see and everything but blue was at one time red. You say, what's a Proto-Hudson River? The Proto-Hudson River did not go out the bottom of New York and into the ocean. It crossed northern New Jersey and went into the Delaware River, north of Trenton, went down the Delaware, and that's why Delaware Bay is so doggone big. It just eroded a huge canyon. And the water level during the Ice Age was 40 stories lower than it is today. That means the beach was all the way out of the continental shelf. And we know that from borings. Some of you who are older, like me, remember in the 70s they thought they were going to find oil here. They did borings all along the continental shelf, all the way out to the drop-off. And all they found once they got 10 feet under the mud was prairie. And even some, remember those old big tusk things that ran around? Even found some bones and tusks of some of them, pieces of them that brought up. Anyway, going further. Wind, water, and time eroded the soft uplands around the river bottoms, resulting in the lower areas shown in yellow, green, and light blue. The dark blue areas remain covered as the water level dropped. That means when the water level dropped, everything you see in blue was covered with water. You see where the arrow I have that says Absecon? All of Absecon was at one time underwater. Jimmy Leach Road was a Ice Age runoff creek that was about a block wide, but only about 10 feet deep. The parkway was built on a sand dune that stretches from North Jersey to Cape May. Now that's smart, by the way. The dirt's already there, the sand's all there. Why reinvent the mousetrap? We go further. This is called a badland structure when it's all eroded, like out west. The channeled badland structure you see was a result of that erosion, which was completed before the end of the current era of the current Ice Age. Ice Ages started 2.5 million years ago. And by the way, from 2.5 million years ago to 11,000 years ago, there have been 51 ice ages and an interglacial period between them. Now, why am I saying that? Because if you look at that where my red arrow is, all this erosion and all this ice age stuff is what creates Absecon Creek. We go further. I won't read as much here. And by the way, you are absolutely welcome to a set of these slides. All you would need to do would be to email me. You can check with me afterwards. Say, I want it. You give me an email. I will put the presentation in Dropbox. And then I will send you a link or Google or wherever the link comes out. All you do is double click on it in your computer and it will download it to your computer. It's in Microsoft PowerPoint. Okay? So, here's what I want you to see. I want you to see the blue arrows. By the way, this is the continental shelf. This is prairie all the way out here, a couple million years ago. The water comes down through Pennsylvania, but then comes the ice age. And you say, well, Norm, we were never under ice. You're absolutely right. But, notice the white, that's how far the ice sheets came. How many of you are familiar with the Garden State Parkway? If you drive up to mile 128 or 129, you go across the Raritan River Bridge. You know that big bridges up there? If you go on the other side of the bridge, you will go up a hill where there are cell towers on the top of the hill. That is the dump of rock and dirt that the last ice sheet ended. That means that's where it ended. And at that sheet, at that point, the ice sheet was approximately 1 mile thick. Process that in your head. The highest skyscrapers in New York City would have just been babies. We're in an interglacial now. That means between two ice ages. Ice ages have interglacials of about 20 or 30,000 years. We're either in an interglacial and the ice is going to return, or there'll be no more ice ages. But we're not smart enough yet in this field of science to know which is true. So, you have all of South Jersey is covered with dirt from the water coming down. When the water recedes, the rains and the wind erode it. Just like they've eroded things out in the American Southwest, and you have all those wild things. And that's what causes the uplands and the downlands. And it's what has caused every single creek in Atlantic County, including your favorite creek, Absecon Creek. So we go further. This is a map that's from Google Maps. You see the arrow there. The red arrow essentially is just below Absecon Creek. Here is Absecon here, and this is the White Horse Pike and the railroad. Are we okay with that? Yep. I want you to ask me a question. Somebody asked me this question. Why did they build the railroad where it was? Somebody asked that question.
Was it the highest ground?
Yeah, I didn't say answer it. I said ask a question. Okay.
Was it the highest ground?
Yes, it was. I'm glad you asked. When all the erosion occurred, some stuff got left high and some stuff was low. Does that make sense to you? The line, the red line coming up from Absecon is one of the highest points in the county. It gets, by the time it hits Hamilton, it's 100 feet above sea level. And it continues to rise. Now you see that big lump? Picture that lump going from Absecon. Now it's not Absecon downtown. It's the railroad. That lump is what separates which way the springs send their water and the creeks send their water in Atlantic County. If they are to the north of that line, they flow to the Mullica River. If they are to the south of that line, to the Great Egg Harbor River, except, see this little red line? There's a secondary bump in there. It's approximately where the expressway goes over. That bump is what sends Absecon Creek to Absecon Bay. If that were not there, Absecon Creek would flow to the Great Egg Harbor River. And that bump is part of the reason that engineers chose that for the Atlantic City Expressway. Part of the reason they chose the other bump for the railroad. Why build a bump if one already exists? So you get that idea. Are we okay there? Any questions so far? Don't feel shy if you have questions, please. Yeah. Okay, now here we come back to LiDAR, and this you now can see things. I have 4 arrows on there. Up top, if you look at the arrow where it says AC Airport runways, can you see the runways there? Kinda. They're depressions. That's the reason you can see them. It's not that they're concrete. It's that they're a little lower. Because LiDAR is measuring how long the signal takes to go from the plane or the satellite to the ground and back again. Over here is the White Horse Pike, much harder to see, but you can kind of see it coming out on this bump here. Now, what else is over here? This right up here, in the Sangamon period between the Inner Ice Age, was all a bay. Now, here's Absecon Creek. It comes in. Here's the first reservoir, here's the second. There it goes. The creeks go out through the tech center. These go up almost to the White Horse Pike and then back down. These go up this way. This goes down. Conover Creek comes down in here. Abel's Creek goes in there. But everything you see that is any shade of blue was once a bay filled with water. You say, when did it cease becoming a bay? It ceased becoming a bay approximately 70,000 years ago, when the newest ice age, the Wisconsin Ice Age, started, and the water level went, because as the ice sheets built, the water went into the ice sheets. Just like right now, we're in a melting period. Now, by the way, all the water rise is not due to global warming. Part of it is we are in the end of an ice age. And we are still in the meltdown of the polar caps. And that's filling it up. Now, yes, we people have dumped a lot of stuff into the atmosphere. But what we're not told is that's not the only problem. Half the problem we can't do anything about. Now, ready? Here's the seesaw. Are we ready to take a ride? On this end of the seesaw, on this end of the seesaw sits North Jersey. On this end sits South Jersey. We okay?
Yep.
We get an ice age. The ice sheet now becomes a mile thick. Tell me what's going to happen to the seesaw. The weight of the ice age is going to push the crust of the earth right down into the mantle zone. When the ice melts, the scientists call it isostasis. It's going to come back to equal. And as North Jersey pops back up, which it still is, by the way, what happens to the other end of the seesaw?
It goes down.
It goes down. So South Jersey is actually going down. So we have a double whammy. We are in the very slow process of going down maybe an inch or two every 500 years. But at the same time, the atmosphere is warming. More water is coming in because the ice caps are melting. But what happens to water as it warms? Anybody remember their high school science? What happens to anything when you warm it up? It expands. And so the water takes up more space. And that's why we need water meters over at Absecon Creek where the White Horse Pike and Shore Road are to continually check to see when it's getting bad. So, bottom. See this here? We built Shore Road along here in Pleasantville, didn't we? You know what this was? And it's a sand dune from 2 ice ages back. So everyone that lives along Shore Road or downtown Absecon, you are living on a sand dune. You are at the beach. So get out your sunblock, except don't try to swim. It won't work. The water has gone. So now what we do is we go further, one more slide like this, and we look at Absecon Creek up and down. Absecon Creek was originally called the Redding River. Now why was it called the Redding River? because a family named Redding
Showed up first, right?
showed up and owned most of the land alongside of it. It shows it on 1955 Atlantic County stream map from the DEP. It was now, I want you to look at Absecon Creek. Here's the start at Absecon Bay. Here's the Fire Road, Reservoir, Westcott Road going up there, Fire Road, you know where that is, right? Okay, here comes the creek down, somewhere in here, Route 9 goes over, and here's where Shore Road's going to come over right here. You can see the sand dune, what's left. Okay, all this that you see, all this was water. And when the Ice Age was melting, from about 13,000 BC to about 11,000 BC, maybe even 10, the water was flowing crazy down here. And Absecon Creek was as wide as the blue area. You stand in Absecon Creek. Picture you're in a little canoe, you're out in it, and you see marsh over there, and marsh over there, correct? Marsh is not original. That was all flowing water. So the Redding River really was a river. And it was much wider when people first settled Absecon in the late 1600s and early 1700s. Amazing place we can learn when we go back into the maps. And we now move on, and now we look at some old maps. In the early 1700s, anybody that didn't live in Absecon that traveled down the shore by boat had no idea Absecon was there. Because in the early 1700s, Absecon Inlet, going out by Atlantic City, was a terrible inlet. Somehow, by the Revolutionary War, it changed its name to Comfort Inlet. From Dangerous Inlet to Comfort Inlet. So no one would have come in it then, unless they were a local that knew how to do it. But Absecon Inlet was different then. It was much wider. It was as wide as the Longport Ocean City Inlet is today. And in the middle of it was an island called Peter's Island. And in the early 1800s, there was a hotel on the island called Peter's Hotel. So who owned the island?
A guy named Peter.
A guy named Peter. That's how we get most of our names. And you can see where it shows up in the early 1700s. Now we go further. Here's a map from 1812. All of a sudden, Absecon Creek, look at the top red arrow, shows up. Absecon shows, and what does that say? Honus shows. The area around Absecon Creek was called Honus. The area in Absecon proper, right in town, was and north was Absecon. Now, I have no idea who Honus was, but there had to be a Honus for the area to be called Honus. So maybe you'll find out one day and let me know. You can see what the creek does. By the way, look at the Great Egg Harbor Inlet. Do you see where there's an island in the middle of that inlet? Longport ended at the Longport Bridge in the early 1800s. And Atlantic City, or Absecon Island, had 3 more inlets in it. That's how we got the border lines between Atlantic City and Ventnor, Ventnor and Margate, and Ventnor and Longport. Creeks went out from the bay, and there were inlets there. I found out about that from my grandmother when she was in her 90s. I thought she had lost it. She was telling me the story. Her stepfather was the county detective, and he took her to go to Longport with him one day when she was 8 years old. He had to go down there and investigate a burglary. And he decided he would take her, and after he got done investigating, they would go on the Longport beach and pick beach plums. I'd never heard of a beach plum before in my life, but they used to make pies out of it. So here's what she says. She says, Norm, when we were going down on the train, it was the first time in my life I ever remember going across a bridge. It's the bridge. She said, yes. 2 of them on the train. Grandma, you sure? Absolutely. They were cool. Weren't big, but they were cool. I'm thinking, wait a minute. You get on the train at Boston and Atlantic Avenue, because that's where you live, and you go by the Knife and Fork on Atlantic Avenue, and you head all the way to Longport. There's no bridge there. Kept it in the back of my mind until I saw an old map. Between Atlantic City and Ventnor, Jackson Avenue today, that was called Dry Inlet, because at low tide it was dry. Yes! It really is this, you know, they weren't creative with the names. And at Fredericksburg Avenue, there was another one, and at Osborne Avenue in Margate, there was another inlet. So anyway, we'll go on. Here is what I learned about your creek. Your creek is like every other creek anywhere where creeks live. It has little feeder creeks coming off of it, and that's how the water keeps flowing. The water comes in the feeders, into the main creek, and the creek fills up and flows down by gravity. Right over here, I want you to start at Absecon Creek. Now, this is strange. Absecon Creek is called Reed's River. As you go up Absecon Creek, before you get to before you get to Shore Road, you run into Cranberry Creek. It runs off to the north and runs under Shore Road and into a little swamp just north. Actually, I don't know whether it's north. It's somewhere one side or the other of, you know where the road you make a left on offshore to go back to the United Methodist Church? It's not too far from there. Go up Shore Road from the White Horse Pike, and all of a sudden, if you look on the left-hand side going north, you will see a little swampy around there.
Yeah.
Jenkins' house.
Huh?
Yeah, John Jenkins' house.
Okay, well, that was called Cranberry Creek. I guess they, by the way, why do you think they call it Cranberry Creek? What do you think they grew there?
Cranberry.
Cranberries, that's right. Okay, then you get to a thing you may not know about. When the White Horse Pike was repaved in the 50s, they took it out. Here's what they did with Absecon Creek. Now you are standing right in the middle of traffic now. Shore Road and the White Horse Pike. You are standing right in the middle and you are looking toward Atlantic City. Everybody okay with that? Go about 400 yards down the creek. That means you're on the marsh side of the creek. And they built a berm completely across the creek and put a sluice gate in it that only worked one way. So when the water came down after it rained and the creek was running, the water went right out the way it should into the bay. But when the tide came up, the salt water couldn't go back up into the creek. So what you created was freshwater marshlands. And they farmed the marshlands. And that was built about, well, the earliest one was on English Creek, and that was built in 1790. So this was probably built in the early 1800s. And the berm was there, not the dam, but the berm was there until at least the 50s. Rob, you got me the map, whether you realized it or not, to show when the road construction came of the White Horse Pike, the widening, that's when they took the berm out. Now, go further. We're now coming up the creek again. Shift yourself. You've left the bay. You're coming up the creek. You passed the dam. Next thing you do is you come to Conover's Creek. Conover's Creek is after you cross over the Shore Road, and it goes toward Pleasantville. Guess who had a mill there?
Conover.
Think.
Conover.
Conover, that's right. Okay. Then you come up a little further, and you find out we have Ingersoll's Creek. And the star is a mill because that mill is owned by Ingersoll. You come up only 100 yards more and you find Abel's Creek, and Abel's Creek runs behind that little development on Westcott Road. What's it called?
Abel's Run.
Abel's Run, that's right. And there were two mills there. There was both a sawmill and a grist mill, and Abel is a dowdy. Okay, then you reach the reservoir, Fire Road. That, I'm calling that the lower pond. There were two mills on that. A sawmill and a grist mill. One for flour, one for saw, And by the way, they could usually change those mills back over either way, so they could do it. But in this era, you had to saw wood if you didn't want to live out in the air. And you had to have grit. And so that's why we have those two kinds of mills. We come to the reservoir, we go up, we're past the reservoir, branch goes off before 8th Avenue called Clem's Branch. Another one comes off right after 6th Avenue. Couldn't find a name for that anywhere. Then you have, after 4th Avenue, Rattlesnake Branch. You know what I suspected lived in that branch? A rattlesnake. They were all over, by the way, in South Jersey in the early years. The only place they are now is a protected area up around Willingboro. And then you get, finally, you're going to get, the creek is going to split and go north, right up along the White Horse Pike, and curl back into the Tech Center, and south, and out through the airport, all the way to the shopping center where Best Buy is. That's how far Absecon Creek goes there. After you get past the split, you're going to find on the North Creek at Criscout Drive, another unknown one. You're going to then go a little further on the North Creek and find Steelman's Kiln Brook, because somebody named Steelman, there's a Steelman over there videotaping us right now. Some relative of his, after Xanthus Avenue, had a kiln, and he used a small creek there. The North Branch. Now I want you to watch. North Branch, we're going to do it this way. They split. I got to split this way, I think. Anyway, the North Branch goes up almost to the railroad, actually then crosses under the railroad and comes back, comes down into the Tech Center, and the spring that feeds that is somewhere under the landing strips. You say, how could that be? The creeks that feed Moss Mill Road and Moss Mill Stream and Clark's Mill Stream or Nakoti Creek are under the White Horse Pike. Say, how do they do that? They just stay under there and happily flow to the side, because when they built the White Horse Pike, they put culvert under it so it wouldn't collapse. I guess that's what they do with the White Horse Pike too. Anyway, the South Creek that goes into the second reservoir. The second reservoir is the one you can see from the parkway. We can't go in it, we can't see it today anymore. We can't drive by it. The parkway's there. After that, after you get through out in the airport, there's a branch called Cedar Creek. There's a branch called Absecon Hollow. Now, by the way, I want you to go to Fire Road. Do you know the big cemetery out on Fire Road? That's a crematory in there. They have the crematory there for the area. If you, in the back of that cemetery is where the source is for Absecon Creek South. You won't see it today because it all goes under roads by culvert because it's very small. But 200 years ago, it would have been a good creek running. Absecon Creek South, the absolute farthest source, is right in the unimproved ground behind the Best Buy store, right off Wrangleboro Road. And the source of another side creek is again under the airport. So your creek, Absecon Creek, is like a tentacled monster that fills up all that lowland and feeds into Absecon Creek and goes down. There may be a better way to present that, okay? Because as I did it tonight, that chart's a little confusing to look at from on PowerPoint. There had to be a different way to do that, but I haven't found it yet. So hopefully I will.
I could prepare a map that shows.
No, I would love that. A map.
Maps are cool. Assistance.
They're better than charts. Okay? This map in 1812 you saw before. This particular map, by the way, shows mills. I don't know whether you can see it. Can you see this little gizmo here, this little sunburst thing? That's the signal for a mill. There's one there, and there's one down in, one directly above it.
Yeah.
Now, at this time, in 1812, there were only 2 mills there that we know of. But that's not true. The top one is true, there was one mill there. The bottom one, on Fire Road today, there were two. But this mill, we've learned from doing other areas, is only partially accurate. Somebody said, yeah, there's a mill there. So the guy that did the map never walked out. One way you can tell is look at the way the creek is drawn. Do you notice how the creek is all smooth curves? Creeks don't flow like that. What he did is he took it out to where he knew what it was and then went, nah. So you've got to find a more accurate map than that, which we have, okay? Let me show you another one. Here's a more accurate map. But remember, look at the lines. He's still just going, but you can see now several mills here. Here is the mill at the reservoir you can see from the parkway. Here are the two mills that you can see from Fire Road. And here, by the way, is Ingersoll's mill. And here's one of the mills we call Abel's mill. There was another one down here further. You cannot see here Collins Mill on this particular map. Okay, Collins Mill, by the way, was the hard one to find. That was difficult.
Norm, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The map, go back to the other map. I have a question. The one, go forward. Yeah, there. The one road that goes due north, is that today's Highland Boulevard? Because
Yes.
Highland Boulevard used to
Highland
go all the way to
Boulevard
Fort
went all the way
Republic.
through and hit into Wrangleboro Road.
Yeah, went all the way to Fort Republic. So
Yes.
That's what I'm just
That's
trying
what
to-
that is, yes. It
Yeah,
went,
I
and
thought
then
so.
evidently when they built Absecon Highlands, they
They-
blocked it off and just filled it all in and you went other ways.
Well, yeah, Absecon Highlands, yeah, that 1904 subdivision
Okay.
eliminated that road.
Okay, but
once you
that's
got-
what that is.
Okay.
And by the way, let me just show you, since you brought that up, I'll show you one other thing here. You see this road going to Abel's Mills?
Yeah.
That's an extension of California Avenue. California, it doesn't show it exactly. California Avenue goes out like this and then goes over like this. And then there it goes either way, that way to Absecon or this way out Westcott Road.
Where was Abel's Mill? Where did you say that was?
What's the name of the development?
Abel's Rock.
No, the name of the
There's another name for it.
Bel Air Lake.
Bel Air Lake.
Bel Lake.
Bel Air Lakes, but there's a road in there called Abel's Run Road, and it was called Abel's Run.
Because Abel's runs through.
Right behind there, between that and that new rifle range, 129,
Yeah.
because I talked to the owner about it when I was out there selling a gun to a friend of mine, and he gave me permission to search. He owns those woods now, all the way to the back of Bel Air, and he gave me permission. I probably won't do it till the winter, because there's multiple families of chickers living out there. I just know. And I don't think they would like me. They might like me. That'd be the problem.
That's the problem.
Okay, here's what I found. Top. Edwin Downey had a sawmill at the far reservoir. Abner Downey had two sawmills at the close reservoir. That's Fire Road. Okay, Abel Downey had two or maybe three sawmills on Abner's Run and Ingersoll's Run, because he bought the one on Ingersoll's Run too. So we found three. Now, how do we find them? Here's what we look for. Remember the LiDAR? We blow it up as far as we can without it getting fuzzy. And we look for straight lines that seem to almost cross a creek. But there's a little slit in them. That is the berm they build up, and the slit is where the dam used to be. He said, well, why do you look for straight lines? Because nature doesn't make straight lines in the woods. Creeks go this way because of the way they run. And if they start a little bit, over the centuries, they start going like that. If you don't believe me, look at a map of the Mullica River. It is a serpentine river, even especially going out to Great Bay. Now I'm going to pick up speed because I don't want to keep you, I don't want to put you to sleep. Yeah, where am I? Here I am. Okay, here is the upper mill at Dowdy's. That's the only picture. It's a sawmill. What you're looking at in front of it is all old lumber, scrap lumber thrown out. You say, Norm, why couldn't you get it sharper? Couldn't get it sharper because we don't have a photograph of it. We have a copy of a photograph. And you can't do restoration well on a copy of a photograph. So, one thing I'm going to suggest to all of you at Absecon is when you get these people that come in with photographs, stop photocopying. Use your scanner. And don't scan them at 200 or 240 or 300. You can't do restoration at that number. Scan them in big files as TIFF files at 600. You say, we're going to have to buy an auxiliary hard drive. You're right. And they only cost $79. Every one of our volunteers gets one. That's 2 terabytes. They will not run out of space on that drive. But you need the bigger scan to do the restoration. Now, do I make sense there?
Yeah.
Okay, by the way, I rent my Photoshop and Lightroom from Adobe, and I pay $9.95 a month. I got it to a deal. I think it's at $16.95 a month now. Yeah, better to rent it than it is to buy it because it's good. They're changing it so fast. All the updates are free when you rent it. Okay, whoop, come back. Okay, Dowdy's Mill, the upper reservoir. When the reservoir was redone, those reservoirs were rebuilt several times. I'm going to tell you what I did. It has nothing to do with this presentation. I took a week and I went through every press online at newspapers.com from the earliest ones in the 1880s. And I searched for reservoir. I searched for every name that I knew owned a mill. And I collected almost 300 articles over from 1900 all the way up to the 1940s and 50s about work on the reservoirs. The reservoirs were rebuilt at least twice, probably 3 times. In 1939 to 40, the upper mill, the one you see from the Parkway, only came to here. There was the dam. This is where Dowdy was, the town of Dowdy. When they built this, during in the run-up to the war, they brought in earth movers and dug all this out and put this dam in. Then they knocked this dam down, but they never took the berm out. The berm is still there underwater. So if they drained the reservoir for work tomorrow, you could go out, you could sneak in. I guess you'd have to do it today. But most of us when we were kids were pretty good at sneaking in places anyway, so we probably still remember. Just make sure you don't get into a place you can't get out of. Okay? The will of Edward Dowdy, 1770, with regard to the mills. I'm not going to read it to you. You have it at your historical society. It is really a difficult will, because it leaves stuff to people that we can't figure out for sure who the people are. He uses names of his kids, he uses fractions, and they meant perfect sense to him, and they meant perfect sense to his kids. Boy, they sure don't make perfect sense today. I'm still missing it. I either have a third too many mills, or I have a third too few mills, and I don't know how you can have a third of a mill. Okay? Anyway, there is the mills on the lower one. There are actually 2 buildings there. You see that? Mm-hmm. First time I saw that picture, it wasn't this picture, it was one without the boat, and it was from a little bit of a different angle, and it was all oxidized, and I thought there was one building that was an L-shaped building. And it was only when I started changing the contrast and the exposure that I started seeing the shadows that showed me there were 2 mills. This is the sawmill, pretty obvious. Here's the junk pile. This is the grist mill in the bigger building, because you couldn't have the flour or the wheat out in the weather. So they were bigger buildings. By the way, above my arms is the pond. My hands are the dam. Below me is the creek. We all tend to think that the mills were here and here. The mills weren't. They were on the downward side of the dam. And they had their own little troughs running through the dam, taking water through a trough called a raceway. And they didn't use the big dam to run the mills. They used the smaller raceway because they used less water. They could get it to move faster, and that turned the wheel faster. So always remember, if you're looking for a mill and you have a dam, look on the downside of the dam. On either side, it will be there. Okay, and here is a sample. Now, this mill actually was on Lily Lake, okay? But this is very much like what we can see appeared on Abel's Run, behind that development we talked about. And an interesting thing here, this guy Abel Dowdy had two mills, and they were only a half a mile apart. And between them, he had a pond he dug out, and when the water was used in one mill, it filled the pond up, and he got to use his second mill. Isn't that really what happens in Absecon with its two reservoirs, the two ponds? But it surprised me that you could have them only a half a mile apart.
Still work.
But all you need is enough water, because you're not running the water over the big dam when you're running the mill. You're running it through the raceways, and you've got boards in the dam blocking the lake. And by the way, these lakes, in all probability, oh, they stumped them, by the way, when they redid they took the stumps out when they redid the reservoirs. But if they never change a mill pond into a reservoir, or never use it to plant cranberries, like Bargaintown Pond, stumps are still there. Go out in a canoe in Bargaintown Pond, and if you want to go fishing, you make sure you use a surface lure. Because if you use one that drops underwater, the stumps will get you. You say, how do you know that? I called many a stump, many a name in Bargaintown Pond when I was young. Okay. Here is Bel Air Lakes. Look at the left photograph first, the color one. Can you see the creek running right through the arrow?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Let me walk up and show you. Okay. Here is the creek coming from Fire Road. Here it is here. Can you see now here it gets wider? Barely you can see a straight line there. That's the remains of a dam from the early 1800s, when that was a mill pond. Now I want you to go over to the other one and look at this in LiDAR. Here, you see how straight this line is now? There's your first dam, and here is your second dam. And when they built Fire Road, they just built it right on top of the mountain for the dam. All they had to do was put a pipe in there, or a little bridge, and their roadbed was already built. Now, I haven't looked at it carefully, but somehow there are small tributaries through here, and they fill, in all probability, these lakes within Bel Air Lakes. So those lakes probably exchange water still with Abel's Mill. There are copies of the LiDAR, Dennis, that are much higher resolution. But the problem is the only computer big enough to get the higher resolution in this area is the ones at the tech center. And nobody's getting permission to use them. And so we have to depend on what we have. Yeah, maybe if, Dennis, you didn't retire so quickly, we'd be in better shape. Anyway, what is this? This is LiDAR, by the way. Here is Fire Road, okay? There, the top arrow is Pleasant Avenue. This is the mill pond. Look at it, can you see it? Now, today, that's just swamp. That's all you see. You come back here, here's what's left of the berm, and then all back in here, where you see the blue moving over to the green. The blue is down, is a hole. The green is higher land. And the difference between the blue and the green are probably the height of me. Mill ponds are not deep. The deepest in the area is probably Lake Lenape, at 10 or 12 feet in some places. Most of them are only 6 to 8 feet deep, because you don't need it deep. You only need enough to collect enough water to keep the water running through the raceways. So that is Abel's Mill. One more mill I'll show you, and I think then we're pretty much close. Okay, I guess I have to walk up here again, I think. There's an old dam berm on this side of the road. Very hard to see. This road here is California Avenue, going up from Shore Road, going toward Route 9. Over in here, on the Pleasantville side, in the LiDAR, you can see the outline of the old pond. Here, by the way, is Holy Spirit High School on Route 9. So here is Route 9 here. So that direction is Pleasantville, Shore Road. You're coming down here. The water is there flowing that way through this creek called Conover's Creek, and it flows into Absecon Creek between Shore Road and Absecon. Now we want to move because this will get redundant. Remember the bank I told you about that they built to close off Absecon near the White Horse Pike to make it for farming? Here's a picture from the 50s, and you can see the berm going all the way across. Can you see it with the trees on it? They took all that out when they redid it to make the stream more navigable. But they didn't need it then because these boats knew how to get in and out. And so they didn't have any problem. That meant that all the land from that up, from the Shore Road up to the first dam at Fire Road, was all farmable. The marshes were all farmable. And they could grow hay in there. They could grow all sorts of animal feed. And they did that one. They did not do it on Dakota Creek, as far as I know. But they did it on every single creek on the Great Egg Harbor River. They put one of those one-way sluice dams in. And they got all this wonderful, fertile mud that would dry out and grow anything. Yeah. Anyway. I don't know why I have this upside down. But that just shows you on a map in that circle. See the straight line? The straight line is that dam. And the straight line closest to this way is the dam berm. And the next straight line this way is Shore Road. There's a picture on the plans for widening the White Horse Pike to take it out. This is what a raceway looks like. This is just an artist's conception, so you get the idea how it works. Here on this, here is the raceway, water going through it. The dam is over here. You can see water going through there just to show you it's a dam. What you would have done is you would have dropped a board on the regular dam, blocked it up, forced the water to come down the raceway. It's coming down here hard. It turns the wheel. The wheel turns this. That has wooden pegs in it. It turns this. This goes up. You have two stones. You pour the grain in between them. The top stone, it goes round and round and round, and it grinds it up to whatever fineness you want, and it comes out holes in the middle, and you have it, and you pack it up, and you sell flour. And what you do is you charge people. They bring in 20 sacks of grain. You charge them X number of dollars per grain. Put the flour right back in the same sacks. Send them home. And when you're not doing that, you turn it over and start cutting wood. If it's before 1850, your saw blade's going up and down. It works on a mechanism just like a bicycle. And if it's 1850 or after, the circular saw blade is invented. And boy, you can just cut a whole lot more wood. Sawing wood. I guess that's where they got sawing wood sounded like snoring. Okay, so again we look at Absecon Creek. And we look at the big bay that went all the way up in there, dried out, and left Absecon Creek. And you see on the left-hand side where Absecon Hollow Village was, all the way in back of that cemetery. So there was a little town that is long gone, and as far as anybody knows who's been back there, there's almost nothing but some old foundations to show
Is that
where
Egg
the
Harbor
buildings
Township
were.
now?
Huh?
Is that Egg Harbor Township area?
Yeah, that would
now?
be Egg Harbor
You're
Township.
saying behind the Laurel Lakes? That was cemetery?
Laurel, the cemetery, Laurel.
Cemetery.
Laura Memorial?
Yeah.
Laurel.
Yeah, if I were going to go to find it, I'll tell you what I'd do. I would walk along Tilton Road. I'd probably start about where the gate is, military gate is, but not on that side of the road. I'd walk on that side of the road. First of all, I'd tell the guy at the gate what I was doing. Okay. Yeah, then I'd go over there and I'd walk along, and what I would look for, I wouldn't walk on the road. I would try to walk about 10 feet in the woods, and I would be looking for a little creek that was coming over the road. Once I found the creek, that would tell me where it goes in, and I can tell you if the road goes this way, and it crosses the road, it goes like this on the map. It's a curve, and it curves up and back of there. But I think it's so small by the time you get behind the Laurel Cemetery that you're better off starting at the road if you want to track it. By the way, you will find the water will be crystal clear because every creek in South Jersey is crystal clear unless it runs through a development. And then it gets dirty. And then one block on the other side of the development, our filtering system is so good with our sand and our cedar trees that it's crystal clear again. The streams that feed Stockton, all the students were up in arms. They figured people were polluting them because there was all sorts of industry and farms near them. The creek's water is cleaner than our reservoir water. So don't ever be afraid of those creeks. And with that, we are done. And I don't know what those spots are.
Stars.
Story.
Looks like stars.